And Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott are with me now. It's good to see you both. I think the first time you've talked together, done an interview together since you made your big announcement yesterday to run as independents. Let me start there. Tell me about the last 24 hours. I'm sure you've received lots of positive feedback for your decision to run as independents, but I guess I want to know if you've gotten any negative feedback. If people aren't happy with what you've done, what are they saying?
Well, there has been many messages flowing in. A lot of people have been going to my website, and I know that they've been going to Jane's website offering support, getting involved. I haven't been able to keep up with the traffic on social media. There's a lot of email messages, not only from people in my riding of Vancouver-Granville, but from across the country. From what I have seen, people are talking about why didn't they go to this party or that party.
Right.
So there's that type of discussion that's been going on.
Okay. What about you, Jane Philpott?
Well, certainly the highlight, and I suspect Jody would probably say the same thing, but for me the highlight was the time in my riding with my constituents as we gathered together in this beautiful country setting halfway between Markham and Stouffville at the farm market, and I was joined by people from all across the community, and they were incredibly supportive, and there was not a negative word there. Everybody was very enthusiastic about the decision that I had made and ready to get to work. Sure, there's been some criticism. I think the most common thing that we hear is from pundits or journalists who think that, oh my gosh, these two are sending themselves into oblivion.
Way to pick a career ender.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there is a great deal of skepticism, I would say, about whether or not either of us can be successful even in winning our own seats, and if so, whether or not we can actually have an influence as independent MPs.
Let me come back to the fact that you're both here together. I mean, the story being written as we go along here is one of two prominent, powerful politicians moving along together here. The announcements about running as independents were made almost in lockstep, just a few minutes apart, yesterday in different parts of the country. You've been largely you've been on the same side of this fight over snc-lavalin since the beginning. And so I guess when people look at Jody and Jane in this image they're watching on television, what is the message you want to convey here? Because I think a lot of people wonder, what am I looking at here? Is this a team? Is this two people trying to build something for the future, some force of some kind? Or what is it you want them to think?
Well, I've been very pleased to have formed a friendship, certainly, with Dr. Jane, and we have worked very well together on some really important and intensely emotional files, like medical assistance in dying and other files. So that is a bond that we have had since almost from the very beginning. I would say to people that are watching, that are seeing Jane and seeing myself, I would ask them or think and hope that they would see people that are committed to public service, people that are committed to ensuring that we engage in public policy discussion and engage around lawmaking from a perspective that embraces all voices, that provides the opportunity for everybody to have a say. Coming out yesterday and announcing that I was running as an independent candidate for Vancouver-Granville was a really exciting day, and I feel optimistic that we're going to continue to have discussions about doing politics differently,
right,
and ensuring that we move beyond the intense nature of partisanship.
But I guess, how much of the relationship, and from the political side now, is a coordinated event? I mean, how much of this was, if you go independent, I'll go independent? And do you think we should go to the Greens? How close is this conversation?
Well, I think one of the messages that I hope that people get out of it is the power of collaboration. When people have similar vision and values, that there are benefits to working together. And Jody and I have learned that we do share a lot of similar perspective on issues, and on certain issues I have more expertise and some Jody has more expertise, and we often share those ideas. But we're also working with many others, including, of course, Elizabeth May as a good colleague. Many NDP members have been great collaborators on issues like pharmacare and drug policy. We're working across the political political spectrum. So collaboration is one of the themes that we hope people will get. I think one of the things that amuses me about the whole, how come those two are doing things together, is I think there's a little bit of
there's a lot of Liberals don't like it.
Right.
I mean, they haven't liked it. They didn't like it when it blew up, and they don't like the fact that it seems to continue on as you're viewed in a lot of Liberal circles as the two people who started this big headache for us, and now they're still hanging out together.
So,
to be
Peter,
pedantic about it, but
I would like to propose that I think there's a bit of misogyny in that. I'm not accusing you of
Right.
that, but people have this thing about why are these two women doing things together? Well, men have collaborated in twos and threes and small groups before for years, and nobody says, why are those two men working so closely together? There's this suspicion around there being some ulterior motive, but in fact it's finding common ground with people that believe in the important issues, whether they be Indigenous rights or climate change or democratic reform, and finding ways to work together. And we yesterday called on others to join us in running as independents. And I think I can speak for Jody in saying I'd love to work with independent partisans as well, and there are many of them in the House.
Were you, as you say, you announced, both of you said yesterday, in very like-sounding speeches as well, about the kind of objectives and goals you want to reach, that you could do more for your constituents as independents than you could as Liberals. If I heard that correctly, that you thought you could do more, no?
I don't know that I said that exactly.
Well, you made the reference was that, the suggestion was that I took was that as independents, we're not bound by anything else. We can do. Well, let me go back then. Are you saying you can't do as much for your constituents as you could do as Liberals than as independents?
Well, I think I think one way to respond to your question is to link it to your previous one and tackle head on the suspicion that people have, or the concern that people have, that Jane and I seem to be appearing or moving in lockstep, as you said. We're working hard for our constituents, and we want to represent our constituents as best as we can, and we're going to do that as independents, and if we're fortunate enough to be elected after October, to continue to do that. And the message that I was wanting to deliver and will continue to deliver is that we need to move beyond partisanship, wherein partisanship determines how one approaches an issue, even if that's not in lockstep or exactly what your constituents are asking you to represent in Ottawa. So it's a matter of ensuring that the voices of your constituents are heard and they're not predetermined or surmounted by the partisan nature of politics. Let me take the critical side of that and say, okay, well, you sat for 3 years in a Liberal government that had its own share of partisanship. I didn't hear you speak out about it then. You spoke out about it after you left, and you're running as independents, and to some people that seems like a convenient argument to make, trying to get elected as independents. I got involved in federal politics, and it was a really hard decision for me to make back in 2014. And I got involved with the firm belief that we could do politics differently. I believed that then, and I believe that now. The experience, and don't get me wrong, I said this yesterday, we accomplished an enormous amount over the last 3.5 years, but in some manner, we moved away from that place where we were putting front and center transparency and openness and a move away from partisanship. That to me is something that I still fundamentally believe in, and we may have lost our way on that.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that you're absolutely right that you didn't hear us necessarily publicly talk about the anxieties that, in my case, that I may have had about hyper-partisanship, but I can certainly tell you that as I sat in the House of Commons all of the last 4 years, I've noticed how counterproductive it is to have these very aggressive, polarized debates in the House. And it was a concern to me right from the beginning. So I may not have gone out quite so publicly to say that, but I don't think that I'm on the record anywhere as being nasty and destructive in my words toward other parties, because I don't think that's helpful at all. And I think that this is now a good opportunity for me and my colleague to come out in the open and say, let's stop so much yelling at one another. Let's find the good in each other's ideas, and let's figure out how we can actually collaborate across party lines, build policy together, listen to good ideas from the other parties, because we've got a lot of big challenges in this country, and we're not going to get things done if we can't figure out how to work together.
You've seen
better.
some of the feedback in the last 24 hours, and let me bring that up too, because I think we touched on it briefly, but you know, the sort of the give your head a shake comments from people saying, look, when it comes down to the actual election, the ballot box issues will be which party has the right climate plan, which party has the jobs plan, which party has the affordability plan. It won't be, people suggest it will not be around how do we make politics more polite and how do we all get along better. So I guess, do you believe that's going to be an uphill battle for you to seed in the minds of people beyond your two ridings? And maybe it's clearly the challenge is to deal with your own riding first, but will that message get lost when people come to put an X on a ballot and say, you know what, I know what Jane's talking about, and I know what Jody's talking about, but these are the people I think have a chance to win and implement the platform I like?
Well, I mean, I'll tackle that first. I actually remark or embrace the criticism that's coming, or people talking about, oh, they're just naive, or that's utopian. I reject that. And the only way that we can change our politics, and it's not to make it more polite necessarily, but to change our politics to make it more effective, so we can deliver on and implement solutions that stand the test of time to issues like climate change or Indigenous reconciliation, is if we start to continue to have these conversations in the lead up to the federal election. I have, and I know Jane does as well, I have over 15,000 pieces of correspondence, emails and otherwise from Canadians who have got engaged in politics, more so than they ever have if they ever were involved over the last 5 months, talking about these fundamental issues of our democracy, talking about how decisions are made, talking about how they're frustrated with the way politics has been done. I see it as an opportunity, and yes, there's going to be criticisms and critics out there who are used to the way things are done and can't see beyond how they could be.
Do you think Parliament would be better if we had 338 independents?
Not necessarily. I don't think that that's certainly not the message that I would be trying to get out there. But Parliament would be better if we had 338 people that respected one another publicly, that listened to one another better, that worked better across the aisle with one another. And you know, I think that it's true. People have suggested that we're proposing some kind of unachievable utopia. And that makes me sad that people think that way, that they don't think this place can be better. Because if you really believe that this is the best we can do as a country, this is the best way that we can govern ourselves, then you sure don't have high aspirations for our country, because we can do better. I think the people of Markham-Stouffville want to do better, and that they will think about that when they go to the ballot box.
A couple of quick things to finish on. You said, Elizabeth May says you said no to the possibility of being the leaders of the Green Party. Is that an ultimate ambition?
To be leaders of the Green
To lead
Party?
some part? Well, I mean, you don't. I mean, it's a complicated question, because if parties aren't where you're at right now, it's hard to say, do you want to be the leader of a party? What's the ultimate objective if you?
For me, I never aspired to be a member of Parliament. I got involved because there were specific issues that I wanted to have addressed, and saw this as an opportunity and a vehicle to do that. I still believe in addressing climate change, in creating the space for Indigenous peoples to be self-determining. I still hold the same values of equality, inclusion, and social justice that I had back in 2015. I'm the same person, and I see myself having a place in this federal discussion, involved in policy and lawmaking, and I want to continue to do that. That's the ambition that I have, and people can impart ambition on me, but my ambition is to fundamentally change the way laws and policies impact people, particularly marginalized people, and that's what I got involved in politics to do, and there's still more to be done. So that's my ambition.
Do you ever see yourselves back in a party?
I would say you never say never, and if I may answer the same question, Peter, because we get put on this planet for a few decades if we're lucky, And I think those of us in this room have been given a considerable amount of privilege. I believe that any privilege I've been able to get in terms of getting an education and an opportunity to serve like this is meant to be used for the good of the people around me and to right some of the injustices that are going on. So I'm in this business to be able to impact the lives of people in my community and in my country, to take on the hard challenges of this country. I don't need to be a leader of any party to do that. I want to be a really good member of parliament. I want to serve the people of my community and do everything, every waking moment that I have to improve the lives of people.
Okay, you're both embarking on a no doubt a hard challenge ahead. Sounds like you're up for it. So we'll continue to follow it. Thank you both.
Hard things are worth the effort, for sure.